television network. My name is Ekpo Temple, and it's that time of the day where we'll take you through the happenings in sports. And of course, you know how we do it here. We look at the trending stories, and the biggest of them all is the fact that we now have a new Super Eagles coach. We're going to tell you about him and everything you need to know. Of course, more reaction to that particular one. The announcement was done in the early hours of this morning, and we'll look at it. We'll also dissect it. Don't also forget that the US Open is ongoing. A lot of results popping out from that side. I'll bless you with those information. All this will form bulk of the conversation here on today's edition of the show. It is the transfer season, and we're still counting down to the end of August, where the transfer is getting heated. Manchester United are in the verge of signing a player. Who is that? Just keep a date with us in the next couple of minutes. We'll unravel all this today on the show. Don't go anywhere. If you're just joining us, it's Sports Extraordinary here on Atlantic Television Network. And of course, I did mention earlier that it is the season of the US Open, the last Grand Slam every year. And of course, it is the 144th edition of the US Open. Started in 1881. Of course, far back then, it's been a very long time. And so you can begin to imagine winners that have emerged in that hard court. I tell you, it is going on at Queen's Club in the US, and the defending champion yesterday was in fantastic form. We saw what Cory Kokogov did in that particular one against Vavera. She got that particular one. She's now through to the next round, and then today a lot of reaction. But Mike, generally, the US Open, as we all know, starts on the last Monday of August, and we saw that clearly yesterday. A lot of people were mistaken, thinking that it would be the next. But of course, August ends this week, so there's no two ways about it. But so far, so good. I'm sure you've been following up happenings from that side since yesterday. Let's take us through some of the events that has happened from day one of this year's Open.
Yes, for me, the U.S. Open is another season, defining moment for some of the key players out there who have not been able to win any major trophy so far this season. They want to use this as a makeshift for them to at least make a very good finish for the season as well. Some big-name players like the likes of Novak Djokovic, Carlos Alcaraz, Taylor Fritz, and in the WTA, you got to mention the likes of Marketa Vondrousova, Aryna Sabalenka, to mention some of the key names that is also part in this year's edition. And of course, in the ATP yesterday, we actually saw some games. But basically, some of the key notable names also progressed through in that very one. There's no major upset. But in the WTA, yes, Pablo Chenkova actually was the first major upset in that very one, as she fell to the firepower of her opponent. Away from that, I think it has been basically what is expected, especially from the preliminary round of this competition. In the preliminary round, some of these high-ranked players, they get an easy draw, and that makes it easy for them to go through in the first stage of the competition. So we have not seen any major upset, especially on one or two names out there in the ATP and in the WTA as well. But then some of the familiar names that you are very good with, the likes of Iga Swiatek, Marketa Vondrousova, Cory Kokogov, was in action yesterday, as she actually, made a statement of intent by dispatching her opponent 6-2, 6-4, in that very one. So for me, that is basically what actually transpired yesterday at the US Open. So we have some of the key players, not yet in action, the likes of the winner of this year's Olympic game, talking about Novak Djokovic, has not played, and we still are waiting to take part in this very one. And of course, Novak Djokovic is set to pursue his 25th Grand Slam, which is going to be a record-breaking one for him if he actually makes this one count. Of course, he is the only player to have won everything that is needed to be won in the world of tennis. This season, you may want to say he has not had an impressive season so far, building up to the Paris Olympic game. But then he was able to work his way through to the final in the they just concluded Paris Olympic game, and was able to win the only medal that have hitherto eluded his trophies of cabinet, which is the US. They're talking about the French Open. How they actually make that one count, where he got to the final against Carlos Alcaraz, which he eventually won. And this time around, he's just in a record. He wants to make it 25 Grand Slam, which is, going to be massive. So for me, these are some of the basic things that have, caught my fancy. That is some of the highlights so far in this year's Paris Olympic game. But like I said, some of the players that you don't expect them to do very well, they will be putting every effort necessary so as to finish very high, because like I said, this is the last tournament of the season, talking about the US Open, and everybody will want to work so hard so that at least he or she finishes very strong. And that is just the crux of the highlights of the event in the ongoing US Open. The
US Open is on the 144th edition of the US Open, and I tell you for sure, it is living up to expectation. The tournament consists of 5 primary championships, men and women singles, We have the men's and the women's double and mixed double. And the tournament also includes the event for senior, juniors, and wheelchair players since 1979. So a lot has been happening. And of course, the tournament also is played on the acrylic hard court at the USA Billie Jean, King National Tennis Center in Flushing Meadows. So when you hear Flushing Meadows, it is peculiar or unique to the US Open. So a lot of first we'll address you with more of this information. And talking about information, you can also get to see that it was since 1971 to 2021 that the US Open employed what we call the standard tie break. We have, of course, first to 7 points, and then the winner will get to win by 2. So we had that tie break. Otherwise, before now, it wasn't so, And then, of course, if you look at the prize money, and then very interesting, Mike, is to also know that in the US Open, no player is less than 14 years old. So for you to partake in the US Open, you must be at least 14 years and above, counting.
Yes, definitely. I actually went through some of the finding. That is what it is. And, at the age of 14, before you can be able to take part in this very one. And I think for me, that makes it even more mature because, if you are under 14, there's this level of, immaturity in you out there that sometimes you may not be able to control emotions. And we've actually seen so many players during the course of prosecuting their game in some of the major championships also, very erratic, not able to control their emotion, especially where they get to lose game. You see some of them yelling at the umpire behind the, the touchline out there, which for me, it is an act of, immaturity, and this is the reason why they've actually, put up that high fence of standards to make sure that before you take part in this very one, you must at least attain the age of 14 before you can properly, be part and parcel of the US Open.
And very interesting is to know that the winner of the US Open last year, we saw Koriko Golf and Nick this particular one to get her hands on her first Grand Slam of her career. And then she looks like a favorite to also defend this particular one, not taking, for granted the big names like you mentioned earlier, Iga Swiatek and all that. But also very striking is the 2,000 points is at stake, just like every other Grand Slam. So who gets a win gets 2,000 points added to his or her existing point, which for me is very normal. So every player knows that this is the last Grand Slam of the year. You need to use the opportunity. If your points have been down, you can use this one, win this one, and it blossoms you. And that's why sometimes when you get to see some players who are within the top 30, when they win 2,000 points, you'll be amazed. With the next ranking, you see them, like Vondrousova, when she won a Grand Slam, then these players, you just see them catapult back to, top 10, top 11, 10, top 12. And 2,000 points is at stake, Mike, and a lot will truly be at stake, like you said.
Definitely a lot is at stake in this very one. To make this one count so that she continue to dominate in the WTA. But then we have other good players as well that is ready to give her a run for her money. Coco Gauff, we want to say the defending champion, but does she truly have what it takes to defend this very one? For me, very, very difficult. Looking at what happened in the Just Paris Olympic game, you saw how even the world #1, Iga Swiatek, was hosted out in the competition very early. In fact, an unknown relatively player that you don't even expect, the Chinese, Guanxing, making that one count in the Olympic game. So with that, I think Coco Gauff need to fight so hard. She need to fight tooth and nail. She need to work her fingers to the bone, to ensure that she makes this one count as a defending champion. If not, I tell you, she would definitely lose this very one, because many players, like I said earlier, is ready. They are in for this very one because they want to make the point count for themselves and also finish very high on a high note, as the season comes to an end.
As the season comes to an end, and of course, $3 million is at stake here for the winner, Mike.
Big amount of money. I think if you get to rack up this one into your bank account, you can go.
Unfortunately, there's no in there to even start thinking of that conversion. But it's a big money.
Yeah, it's a big money. Just trying to relate that to how much the monetary price is, the value of it. I just need to know that you are made for life. And that is why we keep talking about the fact of the Nigerian parents to actually encourage their kids, their loved ones, to start taking pleasure in playing table tennis or long tennis, because it pays a lot. Because what we know these days about football, if it is not football, parents think that it's only football just because of the exposure that we've given to football that, you know, it becomes so lucrative. They don't even know that a huge chunk of money also, you know, comes with playing the long tennis and some other sports as well. So I think I will encourage parents out there. Your child takes part in playing long tennis, there's no need of trying to stop her because she's doing something that is very, very beneficial, and monetary-wise, there's a lot that comes with it. So for me, huge amount of money in this year's US Open.
Huge amount of money in this year's US Open. If you're just joining us, we are still X-raying and of course also previewing activities of the US Open and what has happened since it started yesterday. It is the 144th edition of the US Open, and I tell you that there is this hunger and taste for success. Can Iga Korikoko and Novak Djokovic defend their title? Only time will tell. But let's take a look at what is happening now. I can tell you for sure that as it stands now at the Arthur Ashe Stadium, the #1 player in tennis, talking about Iga Swiatek in the WTA, is currently taking on Kamila Rukimova, that lady there, and of course it is getting hot between the both of them. Iga Swiatek has won the first set 6-4. They are in the second set now, and then of course the third game of the second set, that's where they are, is 3-1, and of course it looks like Swiatek might just have a win. If she gets a win in this second set, that will be all, and she will to the next round.
Yeah, I knew it before now that she's truly favored in this very one to make it count for herself, because taking a look at the opponent that she's actually up against, they are no match in any way. I've actually taken a careful perusals about their last form as well. I tell you, with all things being equal, I see Iga Swiatek coasting home with a victory in this very one.
All right, and the #1 player in the WTA when it comes to the British setup, Katie Boulter, is currently taking on Sasanovic in that particular encounter. Alessandra Kasanovic. That game is ongoing now at that court 17. Of course, you know that in the US Open they have a lot of courts, and so it can have a lot. I mean, it accommodates as many as, because they needed to, from round of 64 down to the final, they need to have been playing a lot.
And it makes it even more fun for the fans out there, because it's more like spreading.
You get to see exactly like the setup we saw during the Olympics. Well, a lot of games can be going on. So if you are in that particular stadium, court 1, court 2, court 3 can be seen 4 games at the same time.
And that is what it is. This is what we are talking about, developed climbs out there. This is what you get. You make it very easy for fans to get to assess their favorite players. You get to see them one-on-one, because taking a look at the fact that if it is very far, you begin to think about how you are going to board a train down to the next municipal for it to be part and parcel of it. But then they make it very easy. They spread it across the state out there, so that wherever you find yourself,
you can just have the fun.
Seamlessly go there and have fun and go back with your family. So that is the difference between a developed client and what we find ourselves right here.
At the Louis Armstrong Stadium in the WTA, a game is still ongoing, and that's between Danielle Collins, the U.S. international, against another U.S. international, Sidohidi. That game is ongoing, and it looks like Danielle Collins is okay. It's a tie now, 5-1, 5-7, and the last game is ongoing between the both sides. Danielle Collins will be retiring formally after this year, and this is her home Grand Slam, and it's expected that when you're playing your home Grand Slam, especially with your compatriot, and I don't know where the pendulum will swing to, but they have 1-1 against each other. Whosoever wins the last one gets the day.
For me, whenever we mention home crowd, I do not belong to that thought of philosophy that home crowd actually gets you to add more, strength, especially in long tennis court out there where you want to get, to finish on a very high note. If you take a look at what actually happened to Rafael Nadal in the last Olympic game, where she was playing in one of her fancied favorite ground in front of her own crowd as well, but then not able to, prove any points out there to make it count for him before he finally retired. He was defeated very easy, by a relatively unknown player out there. So most time, home crowd doesn't even count in terms of long tennis out there. It's about passion, it's about dedication, it's about resilience, it's about your doggedness or what you want to achieve. That is what actually counts. If she want to bank on the home ground to get get the job done and those, I think it's going to be a disappointing one. I just think that she should go all out, you know, to ensure that she makes this one count for herself.
And of course, Chinese is done already. Of course, Zhang Shuai lost against Ashley Kruger. That encounter 6-love, 6-1, 7-5. She lost to Kruger there. Muchova has also gone through to the next round. Other players that have gone through is Pavlenchenkova. She's through to the next round. And then this is very surprising for me. Okay, Zheng Sasha is also there too from this year's game. And the one lady that you trust to hold her own against her opponent is Aina Sabalenka. She's through against Prisa Horns. She got a particular one. It's 6-3, 6-3. You know, straight set finish for her.
Impressive display out there. I wish her well, but then there's a whole lot of hurdles still lying ahead of her because this is just the preliminary stage. Don't forget, as the competition gets to wear on, you expect difficult, hurdles as well.
Lulu Son, that was a walkover, courtesy of. She retired from that encounter, and Bruzetti is now through to the next round. Lucia Bruzetti is through to the next round. And of course, in court 17, we saw Alexandrova, Ekaterina Alexandrova also through to the next round against Victoria Tomova. It ended in the 6-7. She lost that particular first set there, but she came back strong in 6-love, 7-5 victory for her to ensure that she's through. Gabriel Ruse is also through to the next round, and some of the players let's move on now to the ATP, where some of the encounters are also ongoing. And I can tell you that one of the big ones today, like you talked about earlier, Novak Djokovic had a game early in the day, and that game has been concluded. He's through to the next round, getting his hand against his opponent in fine fashion. And of course, I will bring you more interesting stories against Rabio Albot. The Spaniard, he was able to get that. Radul Abbott, he got that particular one, and so he's through to the next round.
Expectedly for him out there because he wants to prove a point, like I said earlier. So it's even more easier for him, but then I will still have some tough opponent awaiting him in the future. Daniel
Evans is taking on Karen Kachanov, the Russian, and that game is still on. And other games that are on, Fabio Fognini is taking on Makac. That game is still on. Nabil versus Daniel Altmaier, that game is still on. And of course, it looks like the German Altmaier is coasting home. Okay, he's losing to the Argentine Navoni. Tabuilo is also on against the Goffin. That game is still on. And then Felix Ogualisimi has been also out from this year's tournament. This is not a very good one for the Canadian. Jay Mensik got his pound of flesh against him. And a lot of games ongoing. We hope that by tomorrow, we'll bring you more of these interesting actions and more of the results from that particular one. And a lot at this point in time, every player is just avoiding defeat. You just need to make it through. It doesn't matter your opponent, just make it through to the next one and ensure that you don't get beaten, because one game and you are out from this year's tournament.
Yes, and that is why most of the big names, they don't want to have an upset before them in the first preliminary stage, because if you go out in the preliminary stage as disappointing as ever, like any other thing, you may be hosted out in some parts or in some points of the competition, but not at the early stage. It makes it look as though you are not as good as people thought that you are, and it makes it look as though you are not even prepared for the last Grand Slam of the season. And that is why most of the top name players also take that very serious, especially in their first game, to make sure that they dispatch their opponent. They don't give you any chance to find your rhythm. They just make sure they finish you off so as to at least get themselves prepared and relax and get ready for the next round of the game.
All right, to go on a short break now. When we come back, I did mention earlier that we'll be hearing from a sports pundit on the early announcement of the new head coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, Okudini Osakwe, will be joining us after now to X-ray and also take a look at evaluate the appointment of the new coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Don't forget that Mike is still here, and of course, when we come back, we'll have more tales from club football and also from the Nigerian scene in football matters. from that break, we're just joining us, it's still Sports Extravaganza here on Atlantic Television Network. It's time to talk about the newly announced coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Mike, I'm sure as of yesterday when you left the studios, nothing was said about the Super Eagles coach.
Nothing at all. In fact, to my greatest surprise that the wee hours of this morning, we had that, filtered in that, they've appointed. I said, what? I had to go through the social media handle, the official social media handle of NFF on X, formerly known as Twitter, and also on Facebook, to actually confirm if there is anything to go by, to take that news, with seriousness, or to take it with a pinch of salt. But then, actually discovered that it was true that a new head coach, the German tactician in Bruno Labbadia, has been appointed as the head coach of the Super Eagles. So for me, I think it came as a surprise to me, because there was no sign of such appointment by the NFF and their technical committee, because we've been going forth on who to appoint. You see that they come up to tell us that the French coach, talking about Javi Renard, is in. Sometimes they will tell you he's out. There are so many names that have been muted, but then, to my greatest surprise, the wee hours of this morning, we had that news feeded in that the German tactician has been appointed as the Super Eagles coach.
All right, joining us now is one man who understands the workings of Team Nigeria, and of course, as we prepare for the AFCON qualifier, we're already thinking of how we'll travel to Yo for that game, and then the announcement of the new head coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, Bruno Labbadia, is on. Okudini Christian Osakwe is a sports pundit, and of course one that is very familiar with the workings of the Super Eagles of Nigeria. Oku, welcome to Atlantic Television Network this evening.
Yeah, thank you, Temple, and it's nice to be here.
Nice to be here. Let me get your general take. When you heard that that news dropped at 5:15 this morning, when you heard that a new coach has been appointed, what ran into your mind?
First of all, I was surprised it was coming so early. Maybe they had a midnight session. I don't know why they broke the news that early, but maybe it's another new way of having things done. Yeah, I was excited. I must tell you the truth, I was excited because of all the coaches that we have had, all the names that we have had. He seems to be, he has a better CV than all the other coaches that we have, especially the last one that was thinking around Jan Anderson. So it was a mixed. It was a feeling of excitement for me, given the fact that we have an AFCON qualifier to prosecute in a little less than 2 weeks' time.
Earlier this morning I spoke with our man, and we're talking about you. I say you and him will travel to you next week for that encounter. And we're just talking about it. A lot of persons are still having mixed reaction, or mixed reactions already popping out, being elicited that this man in question, yes, he is an expert in terms of promoting teams from relegation. He's also an expert, in also drowning teams to relegation. So how do we manage this surprise, given that he has not been on the lips of the technical committee during this recruitment and the screening processes of a new coach? At what point did we come to getting him as the coach?
Well, that's the one question that the NFF will have to answer, because it took everyone by surprise. But I think maybe what I have to say is probably there were some things going on behind the scene that they didn't want to let out of the bag. But like I said, this gives us proper structure, because the Guavon arrangement was an interim one, and we don't want interim arrangements for our Super Eagles. We want the proper manager with his proper structure. Maybe he's going to come with his own backroom staff. That remains to be seen. But right now, everybody knows that we have a coach for the Super Eagles, and it's not business as usual. It's been a long time in the making, and I think this is the time that we need to, if we want to make anything of our football in the next few months or years, we need to start taking things like this seriously. So I must say I go with the NFF on this one. Put someone there. Let's just have a coach, at the helm of affairs.
But that's not what a lot of Nigerians will want. When you say put someone there, do you think he has attracted the legitimacy of leadership from Nigeria or from Nigerian supporters?
like I said, he happens to be the 6th German to manage the Super Eagles. The last German was Gennaro, and if you look at the two men CV by CV, I think he boasts a better CV than Gennaro. And a lot of people talked about Hervé Renard, and they also spoke about how this fellow Bruno Labbadia has no national team experience. Well, Hervé Renard also had a national team experience before, he won the trophy, the AFCON for Zambia. So I'm saying here, let's cut the man some slack. Let's give him time. Let's see what he has to offer. Like I said, if you place himself and the last two Super Eagles coaches we've had side by side, CV by CV, he beats them hands down. He beats Jose Pesero's CV. His CV beats that of Gennaro, who also did a very good job for Super Eagles. And both men, if Jose Pesero, given the time he was given, could take us to the AFCON finals, and Gennaro could get us the bronze, AFCON bronze, I think this Labbadia fellow would do an even better job. But like I said, it's a structure on ground. All I want the NFF to do is to just back him. We don't want to see a situation where the NFF backs players above coaches. We don't want to see that player power again in Super Eagles. That's one of the reasons that put Finidi in the kind of trouble that he found himself. So throw player power away, back this man, and give him all the support he needs. I believe he's going to deliver.
Just stick with us. I'll get back to you, but stay on the phone. Let me get back to my colleague here in the studio. Mike, you heard from Okwi. He thinks that this is the right choice from the NFF. And of course, a lot of people are already thinking that the choice could be as a result of the funding challenge of the NFF. Do you agree with that?
Well, talking about the opinion of Okwi, I think I don't want to agree with him. I took a different line totally, because when he say we should just put somebody there and that he is the right man for the job because he boasts of a good CV, one will ask, what are the CVs that he boasts of? Because you talk about CV, you must have to talk about tangible substance of what you have achieved.
So what do you imply tangible substance compared to other coaches?
Tangible substance is about you having something to boast of, that this is what I have won, with so club. After playing 483 games during his career as a coach for Hoffenheim, for Stuttgart, and under 20 of the German teams out there. Actually, can he boast of that this is a single silverware that I've won during my reign as a coach throughout the course of the year? So when you talk about CV, I truly don't understand. Then again, you talk about experience. He doesn't have any African football experience. Mind you that African football is quite different from the Europeans. So he might struggle at this point in time to cope with the pressure that comes with African football. And that is why I'm not comfortable. I was actually drumming support for Hervé Renard, and the reason is very simple. He has proven his worth in terms of African football. He won the African Cup of Nations with the Chipolopolo of Zambia in 2012. And so many persons may think that that was a fluke. But then he replicated the same feat with the Ivorians in 2015. So when you talk about money being one of the major factors, that is why NFF had to go for this coach, talking about Bruno. Do you want to sacrifice a quality coach in the altar that you don't have money by going for a lesser coach with less proven CV or integrity in terms of African football? So I don't get it clear. So for me, I have a different opinion from that of Okwi or Sakwe. He's entitled to his opinion, no doubt, but for me, I take a different path.
Okwi, the point he does raise now on the issue of having experience, and I ask, are there times when we've had coaches that have had the experience prior to the appointment as the Super Eagles coach?
Well, I was going to take on my colleague in the studio with that one. Now, let's go back, to some of our previous coaches. Gerard Roa had nothing to offer as in CV-wise. Had not won anything before he became Super Eagles coach. Jose Pesero, the immediate one who left for Finidi George, was even worse than Genaroa. So I'm looking at some of the coaches we've had, and like I said, we don't know these fellows before they come to Nigeria. Yes, it's true he has no national team experience, but if you place him side by side with some of the fellows, some of the coaches we've had in Super Eagles, he stands heads and shoulders above them. So until he comes in and shows us what he's capable of, we may not. I don't think it's the right time to judge him yet because, like I said, he stands. My point is, if you judge him based on the previous coaches we've had the likes of Betty Vox, who was also a German. We've had so many other coaches. We had Clemens Westerhoff. Hello, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. We had Lars Lagerbäck at some point.
Lars Lagerbäck, the Swedish man who just took us to the World Cup and ran away from there. We had Clemens Westerhoff, who did so well even if he had no national team experience. We didn't even know whether he had any coaching experience. We had Bonfrey Joe. We've had coaches who had not won anything but came to the Super Eagles and gave us trophies. Bonfrey Joe is an example. Clemens Westerhoff is another example. So let's give Bruno Labbadia his chance. Let's just give him a chance to show us what he's capable of. And until then, let's not judge him right now. We have a coach who won the Nations Cup AFCON with Tunisia. I'm trying to remember his name, Roger Lemaire. He coached the French side. He had no African experience, but he came in from Europe and also won. He stands as one man who has won both the Euro and the AFCON as a coach. He had no prior African experience before he did that. So, yes, Bruno Labbadia may not have any African experience, may not have any national team experience, but this is a clean slate because the AFCON is starting from a clean. It's a fresh start. This is not a World Cup qualifier. Let's see what he has to offer before we judge him. No. He's heads and shoulders above all the previous ones we've had, CV-wise.
You earlier said about respect. I mean, having a crop of players that will respect him for who he is. Mike, do you agree with Okwi on that one, that this crop of players will respect him and also give him the support that is due him?
Well, I think I tend to, tilt toward leaning to Okwi's opinion in that very regard because, the skin pigmentation seems to be the factor here with Nigerian players. We tend to accord more respect to the foreign-based, coaches because of their skin color, okay, compared to our home-based, homegrown coaches out here. I totally go with that because, I think over there, they tend to see these white people as more superior. I don't know whether because of the color, I don't know what it is, but then I totally agree that he can be able to instill back that discipline for players in the national team. Because if he were to be Bruno Labbadia, Victor Osimhen wouldn't have gone to the social media to lambast and lampoon Finidi George the way he did. He won't do that against such a a white man. So I go with him on that.
Okay, before we let you go, I mean, the first challenge before him now is the AFCON qualifier next week. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, like I said, it's a fresh start. It's on a little challenge. The only challenge is that he's coming just about 11 days to the big one in Uyo on the 7th of September. I would have brought him earlier. We should have done so much to bring him earlier, at least maybe 2 or 3 months before this encounter. But it's a challenge. He's been given a 40-man list to asked to prune it down to 23. So that's his first task as Super Eagles coach. Remove 17 names from the 40. That's another area where I think the NFF we didn't do well. We should have allowed him to make his choice, look at the players, and their performances in Europe right now. The season is up and running. The players I'm looking at Kelechi Iheanacho and Chidera Ejuke right now for Sevilla against the Mallorca side. And so the coach should have been allowed to draw up his list by himself. But be that as it's made, what's been done has been done. I think, like I said, it's a fresh start. It's not the World Cup qualifier where we see we've lost a lot of ground. This is a fresh start. Everyone is beginning from on a new slate. So I want to believe that he's going to do well, and that the players should also be hungry. I mean, he should talk the players into the action. They should be hungry, given that expectations are very low because of their recent past performances.
I'm only bothered about the fact that no periodic agreement or condition was attached to his contract, and no monetary value was also attached.
Yes, I was in the studio this afternoon where my colleague said it's being run like a secret court. That's on the lighter side. But if you look at some of the contracts that we've handed some of our coaches in the recent past, we didn't even know how much they were paid until Joseph Pesero came out to shout. We didn't know how much he was paid. Gennaro up to now, I'm not sure I even understand how much Gennaro was paid and how much is being owed. So So these are some of the gray areas that, some of the things that we do concerning contracts regarding our coaches and even some of our players that that is a big challenge for journalists. You can't at your fingertips get some of this information. So, but I don't know why it's like that. But like I want to believe, I think that maybe there were no conditions attached because they want to give him time. I feel that even if he doesn't qualify for the World Cup, he will still have time. He needs time to be, because he is one man who's renowned for developing youth, and building teams. So I want to believe that NFF will be patient with this one and give him some time to build the side.
Many thanks to you, Okwi, for joining us on the show today. We appreciate it. I hope that within the week we'll get to hear from you as reaction continue to be elicited about Bruno Labbadia.
Thank you so much, Temple. Please come with my lunch to you as you're coming.
Surely we'll be there, and of course we'll have to test his metal a little. But Mike, you heard from Okwi there, and that area he touched lastly before we'll have to call him off. No contract, no formal contract, and it continues. And it shouldn't be so, even if it's something that we already know the NFF for, but it shouldn't be so.
It shouldn't be so, but that has become a recurrent decimal for us in this part of the climb, that the NFF seems to be running their affair like a secret closet. Every of the activities are shrouded in secrecy. The monetary value of the coaches and how much the contract is worth, what are the conditions, what are the terms of agreement. All these things should be made public, so that we get to know all of this, because don't forget, we gave them that position of authority. It's more like a position of trust. They are our servants, so we demand to know some of this key or vital and sensitive information as regard to how much a coach is being paid, because they don't pay these coaches from their personal pocket. True. It's from our hard taxpayers' money as this thing is being paid. So for me, I think that NFF should do well to also update us with the contract terms and condition handed over to Bruno Labbadia.
All right, let's move now, and of course we will now talk about what is happening in club football. Micah is still this transfer season, and we hear that Manchester United have agreed a 50 million euros, equivalent to 42.29 million pounds, with Paris Saint-Germain for Uruguay midfielder Manuel Ugarte. If this deal goes through, that will be an interesting one for Manchester United, who wants to really beef up for the season after match day 2.
Yeah, Manchester United have been on the road on trying to see if they can be able to get this Uruguayan midfielder Manuel Ugarte. I think for me it's a very good midfielder, and they need such a midfielder to complement the effort of Bruno Fernandes in the midfield, because anytime you take away Bruno Fernandes from Manchester United midfield, it looks as though Manchester United totally collapsed. You saw what happened in their last game. When he was subbed out of the field, Manchester United paid dearly for it, and that is how they fell to the sledgehammer of their opponent. So for me, I think it's going to be of a good addition to the Manchester United squad.
And of course, the issue of with this now, we also hear that Ivan Toney might be heading to the way of Chelsea. Chelsea are having a bout on, as in regards to the Victor Osimhen matter. And I'm asking, if this continues or if this comes to reality, what lies the hope, or where lies the hopes of Victor Osimhen?
Well, that is a big issue and a big puzzle, a big question for Victor Osimhen and his camp, especially his agent, talking about Roberto Calenda. You need to find a way out to get Victor Osimhen out of this dicey situation, because as he stands, it look to be on a cul-de-sac, on a very crossroad that it is, because Chelsea, that was very much interested in his signature, they are now switching attention to Brentford striker, talking about Ivan Toney, and who for me is a very good striker. If they can be able to get him, it's a good one for Chelsea Football Club, as they seek to bolster their squad with that centre forward who can be able to take chances when he comes and slot in the goal, because the likes of Nicola Jackson, I think he has come under heavy criticism from different quarters, even Mikel Obi as well. He's very, very wasteful in front of goal, so you need a proven striker to man or steady the ship of Chelsea attack, and Ivan Toney seems to be that man, and it's going to be a very, big worry for Victor Osimhen if you know, this man goes to Chelsea. It means the discussion of Victor Osimhen coming to Chelsea have already, you know, died down as it stands, because Chelsea, they are not ready to cough out a huge amount of money as it is right now from their new policy to pay, you know, players out there. Unlike the era of Roman Ibrahimovic, where he pays players much as £350,000 a week, £300,000, 250, 280, at most 200, 150. But then, I think the new owner, talking about Todd Bowley and the Leclerc Group, they have now come with a new, you know, arrangement. They want to maximize profit, and that is why they don't give you, you know, such huge amount of you know, wage bill, weekly wage bill. The highest they give these days is 65, 70, at most £80,000 weekly pay. So for me, I think that has also hindered Chelsea, you know, from getting the services of Victor Osimhen. So they are now reverting to Ivan Toney. And of course, you know, Brentford is a mid-table team, and their salary wage is not that big. Because so him coming to Chelsea is even a bigger platform. You want to, you know, take a dive and come to Stamford Bridge immediately.
And then, I mean, at the worst case scenario, what would be the hope of Victor Osimhen?
His case is in limbo. I think the only thing that will come for him is Saudi, you know, clubs out there. But then, 3 days ago, his agent, Roberto Calenda, came up live with Victor Osimhen. He said that, no, this is my client, and he's too young to go to the Saudi Pro League. And of course, don't forget, he's the African Footballer of the Year. Finished 8th position in the Ballon d'Or award. So, still very much relevant. He demands that respect should be paid to Victor Osimhen, according to Little. So, for me, it's about what agents are keen on making, you know, for their...
Of course, and of course, Calenda is a renowned, you know, football agent. So, he has a way of pulling some of these undoubted deals. I won't be surprised what will happen in the next couple of days. But the transfer ends this weekend, and so Victor Osimhen needs to be on and going. Otherwise, I mean, it looks like he might just play back, and I'm just wondering what will be coming in the mind of Conte.
I think Victor Osimhen is probably going to rock his boat if he doesn't leave at the end of this month, because don't forget, transfer window ends on the 12 p.m. or the 31st of this, and we still have about 4 days before it elapses. So, but it's just that it's going to be a kind of a panic buy for some clubs out there, because they want to beat the transfer window deadline to get the services of Victor Osimhen.
All right, many thanks to you, Mike, for being part of the conversation here this evening. We'll be back again tomorrow, the midweek edition of the show. We'll look at trending stories. Not also forgetting that the biggest one in the world of sports now is the US Open, where we'll look at happenings from that side. Ekpo Temple is my name. Have a lovely time on Atlantic Television Network.